Hello, everyone. Welcome again to another Peaceful Solution Character Education Acceptance Unit Teacher Certification class. And if you're standing at this time, please be seated. And if you're joining us over the internet, which many people are all over the world, you can go to, you're probably already there, Peaceful Solution, officialpeacefulsolution.org on Facebook, and go to the top and you'll see the character unit book for free download. And I believe right next to it, you won't see the acceptance unit until you click on where it says more, and there'll be a drop down and you'll see the acceptance unit, and that's the unit where we'll be on tonight. We're going to pick up where Catan left off last time on page 10. But it's really hot out there today. Trying to keep up with everything today. But we'll be on page 10 picking up there. And but before we do that, I want to kind of rehearse a little bit. Let's go back. We're going to rehearse just briefly where Catan covered, hey, you're not finished growing yet, on page 9. And he talked about, accepting yourself means accepting the age you are and those limitations that go with it. And he talked about how, for your own safety, as well as your physical and intellectual growth, your parents, teachers, and authority figures instruct, guide, and monitor how you're influenced, the decisions you make, and how you conduct yourself. And I thought he did an excellent job of explaining, to the young people and to us, why parents, have to train their children to understand the importance of why they're being asked, who are your friends? Why are they being asked, where are you going? Who are you with? Why they're setting limitations for the children and the young teenagers. The importance of those limitations. And remember, really, the most important thing to think about when you think about these limitations as a young person is safety. Safety. That should always be in your mind, that your parents care about your safety and your well-being. Not just your physical safety and well-being, but your mental, intellectual safety as well. And you're always going to have, believe it or not, young people, even when you become an adult, there's limitations. There's always going to be limitations on all of us. We're never just allowed to do whatever we want to do or whatever we feel like doing. That's not practicing self-control. Now, you can do whatever you want to do. The problem is, if you do the wrong thing, there's consequences, as we learn here in the Peaceful Solution. So it's great that he went over this so thoroughly about why it's important for children to understand these things. Remember, it's their responsibility, he's talking about your parents and teachers, to help you grow into the best person you can be. So even though you might be instructed on what time you should come home, who you should be friends with, what time you should go to sleep, and even what you should eat, keep in mind that it really is for your benefit. Now, that word benefit, we're going to see that here in a moment. I want you to turn over to let's turn over to page 15 in the character unit. Let's go back to the character unit. You should have that with you. We'll go ahead, because we're going to often refer to it because it's the foundation of the acceptance unit. Remember, we got to have this moral foundation, and we also will have to remind ourselves of these terms that we're looking at here. That word benefit, it goes to page 15 where it says thankful, because you see on the next line, we got both books. If you look on page 9 again of the acceptance unit, it says a humble, thankful attitude leaves no cause for conflict. Well, that positive character trait, thankful, on page 15 of the character unit, it says to be conscious of the benefits that you have received. To be conscious of the benefits you've received. And that word conscious just means to be aware, to always keep it in mind, okay? And the word benefits, it means an advantage or a profit gained from something. An advantage or a profit gained from something. Now, I know when we think of being thankful, we tend to think of, I got a gift, or I got a new bike, or I got a big allowance, or I got, some kind of monetary award or some kind of recognition, that's the only thing we should be thankful for the positive, what we consider the positive things we get. But what about the correction we receive from our parents and teachers? What about the care and the guidance that they're trying to give us to keep us from making bad choices? Because remember what Catan said last class, a young person needs that guidance. I know they don't think they do, and I didn't think I did when I was that age, but we really do, because our mind is still developing. So what about the advantage or profit we gain from the instruction we're getting from our parents that tell us, I don't want you to go out past a certain time because, it's dangerous out. It's dangerous outside at a certain time of evening. A certain time of night, people are out, out and about, and there's a lot of crime going on. There's a lot of riffraff. So I'd like you to be home at an early time before the sun goes down, etc. Do we think about that as are we thankful for that, or do we think about being thankful for that correction? No, we don't. When I was young, I wasn't thankful that my parents didn't let me stay out as late as I wanted to, or they didn't let me drive when I decided I was ready to drive, when I wanted to have a car. Or I remember I wanted to have a motorcycle. I wanted to have all my friends, neighborhood friends, when I was, 8, 9 years old, they all had motorcycles when they were 12, 13. And all I had was this old Irish setter 10-speed, with a sissy bar on it. It looked kind of strange, and it was way too big for me. And, I wanted to have a motorbike, at least a mini bike or some kind of motorcycle. And my mom said, no, you're not getting one of those. You'll never get one of those. That's a two-wheel coffin. That's what she used to call it. And she had her reasons, and I kind of figured it out one day when I saw one of my friends doing some stunts on his motorcycle, and he actually tried to jump a certain thing, and he ended up falling on his face and got gravel rocks in his face that he was picking out all summer. The rocks got buried in his face, little pebbles, and because of a stunt he tried to pull on a motorcycle. So I can see why my mom was concerned about it, especially with a young person that hasn't really been trained in the care that they need to have for something like that. So, but I wasn't thankful for it at the time. In fact, I was quite upset that my mom wouldn't let me have that. But there's things I look back on in life, that I wasn't thankful for at the time, but now I'm very thankful that my parents put those limitations on me. Did I tell you about the time that I wanted to go fishing with my best friend? I didn't tell you about that? Okay, if you're shaking your head, I don't want to tell the same story twice. I don't like doing that. When I was about 8 years old, and this goes right along with what I'm talking about, I wanted to go fishing actually my best friend invited me on a plane trip. School was out. It was the last day of school. And his family was going to go to a remote cabin. They were going to go fishing on their float plane. And my best friend asked me if I could go with him. Well, I thought for sure my dad would say yes. And when I went to ask my dad if I could go, and I was real excited because it was a float plane. I was going to be able to fly on a plane for the first time in my life. Those kind of planes that land on lakes. It was going to be out in the middle of nowhere. We were going to go fishing. I was going to be with my best friend. So I was excited, and I thought for sure my dad would let me go because it was the last day of school and there was no school. So my dad told me no when I asked him. And I thought, I couldn't believe he was telling me no because there was no reason for him to tell me no, at least in my mind. But he stuck with that. He told me no, and you're not going to go. Well, of course, I was upset about it, and I didn't understand why my dad, and I don't even know that he understood to this day. I don't know. But that weekend passed, and on that Monday morning, when I came out of my bedroom and I came into the living room, both my mom and dad were sitting on the couch reading a paper. And all I remember is they showed me the front page of the Anchorage Daily News that said, 7 people die in freak accident. And it was my best friend and his whole family had died in their cabin when, I guess, it was windy outside. It was a very remote place. And they had put some towels and things down under by the doors to block the wind from coming into their cabin. And they had kerosene lamps burning, and I guess it burned up all the oxygen in the cabin, and they all died in their sleep. Now, you bet now I'm thankful that my dad did not allow me to go on that trip. But at the time, I couldn't figure out what was the problem. Okay? And I still to this day, I don't think I ever asked my dad why he didn't let me go. But I'm glad he didn't. That was a benefit and an advantage I gained from that I'm very thankful for now. And I know that as you get older, you start being more thankful and you start to see why the parents put these limitations on us. And it is for our safety and for our benefit, believe it or not. Okay, so being thankful, remember being conscious of the benefits that you've received. That goes along with being thankful. And then it talked about that humble attitude we need to have, which is on page 14. Hatan went over that again, too, where he says not being proud or arrogant. Humble people don't dispute, argue, or disobey set rules, you know. And think about when you're asked to clean the bathroom. It gives this example of cleaning up after yourself when you use the bathroom, okay? Of course, you're not very thankful that somebody's asking you to clean that bathroom, are you? But what's the advantage of cleaning the bathroom? What's the benefit? What's the profit you can gain from cleaning that bathroom? Well, let's see. We can learn how to clean a bathroom so that when we get older and we have our own bathroom, it won't smell like a Shell station, right? A Shell station bathroom, I mean. It'll be nice and clean because we learn how to clean a bathroom. I'm not picking on Shell. I just remember I could smell them before I got into them. Very, very, very unsanitary, some of these public restrooms. So, you know, that's an advantage, learning how to clean your bathroom, learning that responsibility. And what about the benefit you gain from not having all kinds of bacteria and germs crawling all around the bathroom because you haven't cleaned it? Isn't that a benefit? Does that benefit just you if you clean the bathroom? It benefits everybody, doesn't it? Remember, the thing about having a moral character is when you practice being thankful and humble, it benefits not just you, but it benefits everyone around you too. Because if you clean that bathroom, guess what? You're helping everyone else stay safe. Remember, it's about safety. You know, you're having a clean environment, a healthy, sanitary environment. You know, and by the way, when you become older, and let's say you get a job, and on that job resume, you know, nobody likes to clean the bathroom. I've been a manager at about 5 different companies, and nobody wanted to clean the bathroom when you asked them to. And we didn't have somebody assigned to clean the bathroom. It was whoever was available, okay? And when we used to ask somebody to clean the bathroom, and they said, well, that's not on my job resume. You didn't hire me for that. Usually if you'll read your job description before you get the job, which you should, it'll usually tell you, what your job description is. And then usually there's a little disclaimer at the bottom that says, and every other duty as assigned, right? So cleaning the bathroom, it'd be an advantage to know how to clean it ahead of time when you're young. So when you get older and you're asked to clean that bathroom at your workplace, you'll be one step ahead, right? And you'll be thankful, that somebody cares enough to clean that bathroom, even if it has to be you. Okay, so let's go back to page 9 of the acceptance unit. And I just want to make one more point. Down at the bottom of the page, where it talks about a humble person, when you're asked to have a humble attitude, you're being encouraged to be willing and open to improve yourself. And always know that your actions can be better and your thought processes can be improved. The process of learning moral conduct never ends, even if you reach 100 years old, 200, however old you become. All right, so let's go over to, I'm not going to read If I read LP, let me see what it is. If I read LP1 page F number 4 again, that'll be like the fourth time we've read it, so I'm not going to read it again, but I do want you to turn to it just to show you what we're getting ready to read. I'm not going to go over it because we went over it 3 times already, but just at the bottom there of LP1F4, it says, have students read the sections entitled The Cold Hard Facts and Knowledge is Power, found on page 10 and 11, and remind students that by learning the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, we can gain knowledge to help us develop our full potential, okay? And that's what it's all about, is becoming the best we can be. All right, so let's go ahead and turn to page 10, and let's read the cold hard facts here. And remember, we're going off. Remember what we've been learning from. The name of this chapter is Accepting Me and Accepting You. It says, number 1, every year increasing numbers of teenagers are victims of violent crimes. There's not one city in the United States with a population of over 1,000 people that has not experienced these violent crimes. So think for a minute. If someone in your family or a friend were in danger of being a victim of a violent crime, would you not be worried? Don't be upset with your parents for wanting to know where you're at all times and giving you a curfew. They're trying to keep you safe. Again, you're not going to, when you have a young mind, I understand, but see, you young people that are here now, you have the advantage of being trained right now, the things that I wasn't trained in when I was growing up, so it didn't even cross my mind that my parents were just, I was thinking they were just trying to rain on my parade, or they were just trying to ruin my day or ruin my fun. But when you're taught in the Peaceful Solution, you start to understand that they're trying to keep you safe. They're trying to keep you out of any kind of danger, okay, by setting these rules. And you know as well as I do right now in a lot of these big cities, there's a lot of rioting, looting, and trouble taking place. Man, I saw on the news just the other day, in New York City, some young boy with a gun chasing some other young boy, 14, 15 years old, and just trying to shoot him. And I think he shot him in the back, and the boy lived through it, thankfully. But these things are in broad daylight. It's getting worse and worse. So we can't have this, and don't think, well, that's New York City. New York City's always been that way. No, New York City has started getting a little bit worse in the last couple years since the pandemic broke out. But a lot of these smaller cities, like it's talking about right here, if you read the newspaper of the Abilene, this local newspaper here in Abilene, you'll see crimes are very rampant even here in Abilene. Abilene's only a city of, 130,000 people? But the crime is, this is a big crime wave that goes on here. You read about things all the time. Now, and it's like that in many, many cities. So wouldn't you be concerned if you were a parent, young people, if you had a child? Would you be concerned about their safety and welfare, the way things are going right now? And remember, these riots and these, stirring up this trouble can occur in a flash on social media. They get on Facebook or they get on these different social media sites, and they say, hey, let's all meet down here at, the 700 block of Jones Street, and let's riot. Let's do this and that because that cop did this or that person did that. Let's go down there and destroy that place. And, you're just out there out and about, innocently out and about, and you can get caught up in something. And it's been occurring quite frequently if you read the news. So don't think that you're, any one place is going to be safe for you out there. Okay, and let's look at the second cold hard fact. It says health studies show that the human body, especially the brain, will not develop properly unless it receives proper nourishment and plenty of rest. So unless you desire to always be inadequate in your body and mind, respect your curfew. Yeah, and I would also add, respect the menu that your parents are providing for you, Now, if a teenager was to pick what they were going to eat every night of the week, What they were having, they'd have every night of the week. What do you think their menu would look like? McDonald's. Let's see, Monday night McDonald's, Tuesday night Burger King, Wednesday night the church's chicken. It would just be junk food mainly. Do you think there would be greens? Do you think there would be coleslaw? Do you think there would be anything really healthy and beneficial on that menu? Probably not. So that's why you have parents. That's why you have guardians, to make sure you're getting the proper nutrition, make sure you're getting the proper sleep you need. It's a huge problem right now in the public school system, and even some schools that I've been in recently. Children are sleeping. They're sleeping. They got their heads on the desk. They got their heads on the table when the teacher's talking, which is extremely disrespectful. Now, why is that? Why is that? Why are children not getting enough sleep? Well, their parents are telling them to go to sleep at a certain time, but you know what they're up doing all night? They're on their phone. They're on their, iPad or whatever device. They're even on their video games when their parents aren't looking. And they're up all night playing these things, till 2, 3 in the morning, and then they got to get up for school at 6 or 6:30 in the morning, and by the time they're beat at school because they didn't get any sleep. And how much do you think they're learning when they're sleeping at school? Not learning anything. Okay, so that means there's going to be some kind of consequence, like bad grades, bad reputation. The teacher always sees you with a head on on the desk. Are you going to earn a respectful reputation if you're always sleeping when the teacher's talking? No, you're not. Now, the teacher's going to respect you enough to tell you to get your head off the desk. Respect is showing care and concern for somebody. And they care that you learn. They care that you get the information so you can become the best person you can become. So remember, get enough sleep and plenty of rest. And that's why we have parents to guide us in that direction. Number 3, it says, being with or around the wrong people at the wrong time can wreck your entire life. Following the crowd can lead to making bad choices you could regret for the rest of your life. This is why those in authority over you want to know who your friends are and what you're doing at all times. Okay? You remember we learned on page 70 of the character unit about peer pressure, or peer power was the name of the page. And, our friends don't always exert positive influence on us. Sometimes they want to go another direction. Sometimes they don't want to follow the peaceful solution in certain decisions. That's where we got to stand up and not give in to the influence of peer pressure or negative peer pressure. Okay? We got to be ready for that. And, think about it. I think I've told you before, a lot of parents think their children are hanging around the wrong crowd, but why isn't their child ever the wrong crowd? Hopefully we're not the one that's exerting negative influences on other people. Hopefully we're not the one doing that. Hopefully, and if somebody does try to get us to go against what we're learning in the peaceful solution, we need to grow a backbone. That's our opportunity right there to exercise what we've learned in the peaceful solution and stand up and be assertive for what is right and not going along with the crowd. It's okay to follow the crowd as long as the crowd's not doing something, negative, something that's wrong, something that will bring harm to you, others, or the environment. Okay? Remember that. And we're going to talk more about that here in a moment, about right and wrong. We're going to remind ourselves about that. So remember, being with the wrong people can wreck your entire life. Just one incident can ruin your whole life. Remember that. I know we tend to think sometimes when we read through these things that, well, that couldn't occur to me. That would never occur to me. Yeah. That's not being very humble thinking that way. That's being pretty proud thinking that that couldn't occur to me. because any of us could, if we're not careful, we could very easily fall into some kind of negative incident, negative decision making, and just one wrong decision can ruin our whole life, just in an instant. Okay, so don't ever think it can't occur to us. We always have to be on guard. Okay. Number 4 in the cold hard facts says, and we're going to spend a little bit of time on this because this is something that I think is very important to get across to young people right now, and I'll show you why. It says there are many ways to wreck your health and ruin your opportunity for a great life. And down here, it talks about alcohol abuse and it talks about nicotine. Now, I'm sure you can think of a lot of other ways that people can destroy their opportunity, ruin their opportunity for a great life, and destroy their health. But these right here, alcohol abuse and nicotine, are kind of looked at as, that's not such a big deal. At least I'm not doing meth. You know what? You know how people, they'll say, well, I only smoke cigarettes. At least I'm not smoking marijuana. And then when they start smoking marijuana, it's, well, at least I'm just smoking marijuana. I'm not doing acid. And then they start doing acid. It's, well, at least I'm just doing acid and I'm not doing fentanyl. You know, and they just keep graduating to more things because these things are called gateway drugs, particularly cigarette smoking. We're going to talk about that, and vaping, actually, which is bigger than cigarette smoking right now. All right. Now, let's talk first about alcohol abuse. Now, notice the word abuse. That means you're not using something properly. Okay. Alcohol has health benefits, you know, and you can read about wine, drinking wine and the benefit to your digestive system, your heart, etc. You can read there are health benefits to doing these things in moderation. We're talking right now about the abuse of alcohol. And if you're a young person right now with this book, this is a junior high unit, so that means you shouldn't be drinking, right? So any kind of drinking right now is something you shouldn't be engaging in as a young person. But let's say you are using alcohol as a young person. You're getting into alcohol, which I believe most of us have when we were young. We got into it somehow. My dad used to make brandy. I don't know if you know what brandy is. It's very powerful stuff that you can actually make it yourself out of fruit. I used to love fruit cocktail. And my dad was making some brandy out of fruit cocktail, and he had it up in a little container way up on the top shelf in the kitchen. And it was in a glass canister, so I could see through it. And I was like, man, there's some fruit cocktail up there. I climbed up there and I got into that fruit cocktail, and I thought, man, this tastes pretty strange. You know, it had a strange bite to it. Well, little did I know as I was eating alcohol. There was alcohol. It was fermented fruit cocktail, and it tasted great. Had quite a bite to it, but it tasted great to me. And before you knew it, I was drunk. And I was only about 8 years old. And when my dad came home and I was throwing up all over the place, he said, "You got into that brandy." I didn't know what brandy was, right? But you know what? When I got that taste of that alcohol, you know, it made me want some more. And I remember doing some other things when I was young, trying to find some beer, trying to find, you know, drink somewhere, you know, which led to me stealing beers and things like that to get a buzz or get drunk. But and that's part of that what's called alcohol abuse. Now, some of the damage that comes from alcohol abuse, it shows damages liver. And how it damages your liver is your liver starts to build up a lot of fat, okay? And the scar tissue starts to replace the normal healthy cells in your liver. And that buildup of scar tissue causes inflammation, and it causes what they call cirrhosis of the liver. Okay, so your liver, you got to have your liver. It's there to help your body function properly. You don't want to ruin your liver. You ruin your liver, you ruin any of your organs, there's going to be some kind of breakdown in your body. So, it don't just damage the liver, it damages other things too, but it just gives us an example of how it damages the liver. Also, alcohol abuse slows your reflexes. Like if you were driving a car, and some teens do drive. If you're driving a car, you're not going to react as quickly. Let's say you see everything going on around you when you're driving. If you're a careful driver, you're going to be using all your mirrors. You're going to be aware of everything around you. But if, someone jumps out in the road or something, is in front of you, someone cuts you off, your reaction time is going to be slowed way down. You're not going to react the way you would if you were in your full capacity, okay, in your right mind. And this occurs just with even a little bit of alcohol. You don't have to be drunk to have slow reflexes when you're driving. Drinking impairs, you shouldn't be driving at all if you're drinking, okay, because it impairs, your ability to do certain things, to think clearly, etc. And it clouds your thinking as well. Clouding your thinking. When you drink alcohol and you drink too much alcohol, the thing about it is one thing leads to another. Okay? One thing leads to another. That's the danger of it. Because when you get drunk, then you start feeling like, hey, what else can I do? You start feeling empowered. You start feeling like you're 6 foot tall and nothing can hurt you. And you start getting loud and obnoxious sometimes. That's how some people behave. Get loud and obnoxious. And then you start doing your inhibitions or your things that you wouldn't normally do, you start thinking about doing. And you actually will do them. And we've seen this with, growing up, we've seen certain people that normally we wouldn't think would do anything, like the things that they do when they get drunk, but they do. It lowers people's inhibitions where they'll start doing things that they wouldn't do before because the alcohol will embolden them to do it. They're not in their right mind. It clouds their thinking. And that's the thing, is that anything that impairs your decision making, is that going to be something you're really going to want to do in the peaceful solution? When we're teaching you to make right decisions, are you going to be able to make a right decision with a clouded mind? Think about it. We shouldn't even be making decisions when we have emotions clouding our thoughts, let alone alcohol. Let me ask you this question. Life decisions like buying a car or buying a house. Do you think somebody should go to the bar and get drunk and then go buy a house while they're drunk? They shouldn't get drunk at all, right? But do you think it would be wise to go get drunk at the bar and then go buy a car while you're drunk? Buy a house? How about meet your new wife? Or meet your future husband while you're drunk? Would that be smart? No, it wouldn't, because as soon as your mind clears up, after the alcohol wears off, you're going to say, I bought what? No, no way. I want my money back. Right? Because you're not in your right mind. You're going to make the wrong decision. Okay, so if it wouldn't be wise to make decisions when your mind's, to make some kind of decision if your mind is clouded with emotions like anger or something like that, do you think it would be wise to make decisions or, do you think you can make a right decision if your mind is impaired with drugs and alcohol? No, not possible. But you'll think you can. I remember being drunk as a teenager driving cars, and my quote, air quote, friends in the back seat were always, One thing about it was I brought them closer to the Creator. It looked like they were always praying when I was driving. So, but one thing I noticed is they'd always tell me, "Hey, you're crossing the line. Yeah, hey, BK, get on the you're on the wrong." And I'd be always like, "Don't worry about it. I'm all right. I'm all right." Yeah, as the car's weaving over the center line. Yeah, you think you're all right. Everybody else can see you're not all right, but you think you're all right. It's called deceiving yourself. Okay? All of us think that we can handle certain things when we're not in our right mind that we wouldn't do if we were in our right mind. Okay? So remember, damages liver, slows your reflexes, clouds your thinking. So that's not something that you would want to partake of. Let's look at nicotine. Notice it doesn't say cigarettes. It says nicotine. There's a reason for that. We got a call, the Peaceful Solution got a call about a year and a half ago from a school district down in South Texas that asked us if we could do a presentation on vaping. And I said, really, vaping? Because it was a small community. It was only about 1,500 people in that community. They had a high school, they had a junior high, but they wanted us to go to every school, including the elementary school, to talk to the students about the dangers of vaping. And I was like, really, vaping? They said, yes, it's out of hand. It's out of control. Where the children are even in the classrooms with the little e-cigarettes, they call them, or the vapor devices, smoking in the classroom, thinking that the teacher, because it's not like a cigarette where there's smoke. Okay? So the children were even using them in the school. And they're very sneaky. The way they make them look like, little devices that are innocent. But nicotine, let's just talk about cigarettes real quick, because that was one of the biggest things when I was growing up is, stay away from those cigarettes. Do you realize how many chemicals there are in cigarettes? Have you ever looked? I'm not making this up. How many chemicals are there in cigarettes?
According to U.S. Food and Drug Administration, there are more than 7,000 chemicals in cigarette smoke.
Let's see. What does this say? Is the monitor on? You see a monitor there. Can y'all see that? Okay. I think there's a foggy monitor here. Must be foggy. Did you know that there's 7,000 chemicals in cigarette smoke? 7,000. You heard me right. This is from the FDA.gov, Food and Drug Administration. What are some of those chemicals? At least 38 of them are carcinogens. That means they cause cancer. Let's see. I'll just read you a few of them. And these are in every cigarette. Well, let's see if I can pronounce them. So you have nicotine, which is a drug. Did anybody tell you that? Nicotine's a drug? What they put in cigarettes? Did you know that cigarettes are drugs? It's a drug. Nicotine is a drug. That's what makes you addicted to those cigarettes. It also has cadmium. I think I've seen cadmium in batteries. Lead, acrolein, benzene, ammonia, carbon monoxide, butadiene, formaldehyde. Don't they use that for dead bodies? There's over 7,000 chemicals in cigarettes. Now, in a typical cigarette, it says there's about 12 milligrams of nicotine per cigarette. But they say that when you probably only inhale about 1.8 milligrams per cigarette because, you waste a lot of smoke when you're smoking and you don't get it all. But 12 milligrams per cigarette. But the vaping devices is different. A cigarette has a filter on it, but a vaping device doesn't, and you get the full brunt of the nicotine. Let me tell you how much nicotine you're getting with a vaping device. You're getting the equivalent in one, what they call Juul pod, which is a vaping device. In one Juul pod, you get the equivalent of one pack of cigarettes worth of nicotine just in one dose. One dose. You get the same equivalent as a full pack of cigarettes. By the way, this Juul device, just, if you read the news just yesterday, they agreed to pay North Carolina $40 million for, this is a multi-billion-dollar company selling these vaping devices, but they're targeting you young people. They're targeting young people. They didn't want to admit they are, but they are. They're using, they make these different flavors of the vaping, for vaping, to try to attract the children into doing this. And they just agreed to pay $40 million for their part in doing that, which is a small fraction of what they make every year. These Juul devices, they look like a flash drive. And they can be charged, they can be plugged into a USB port to charge. These e-cigarettes, they call them. These are very dangerous. In fact, we used to show videos of children using vaping devices. And, they have a battery in them. I can't remember what kind of battery it was called, but some of these batteries were blowing up. They were blowing up in their pockets. They were blowing up in their face. One guy had his face blown off with his teeth all blown up in his mouth from a vaping device. Okay, this is the danger of these things, and it's quite common that they blow up, that they malfunction. Very, very dangerous. So nicotine is very addictive. It affects your lungs, your brain, and your liver. And it shortens your lifespan. Okay? And I know they're trying to make out like, well, cigarettes isn't a big deal. At least you're not smoking some kind of pot or doing some kind of drugs. Well, you are doing a drug. If you're smoking cigarettes, you're doing drugs. And this is something you need to really need to put in a student's mind, because I don't think they hear this enough. I never really dawned on me until I was an adult that, wait a minute, nicotine is a drug, just like any other drug, okay? That's what makes it addictive. In fact, nicotine, what nicotine does is it causes your adrenal glands in your brain to release adrenaline, which causes a rush in your body, makes you feel powerful. And dopamine also. It releases dopamine, which is a pleasure center in your brain. So your brain starts to associate nicotine with feeling good. Okay? And that's why, when people quit smoking or try to quit smoking, they start feeling bad. Okay? Because they're so used to that false sense of joy that they're putting in their brain when they smoke cigarettes or they vape. They're putting a drug into their body, which is affecting their brain, which is giving them a false sense of feeling inner peace and joy. Here's the problem with that. When you trick your mind into thinking that it's joyful, that something is joyful and it's pleasurable, you can ruin your brain to where when you actually do feel pleasure, when you actually are in a situation that can cause joy and pleasure, you can't feel it anymore, because your mind has been tricked into releasing dopamine only when a certain chemical releases it, or only when a certain thing releases it prematurely, or what would you call it? I'm looking for the right word. Artificially. You can ruin your brain that way. You can ruin the pleasure that you would normally get when you use drugs that release that dopamine like that, because your mind will malfunction to where it won't be able to release it at the proper times, at the normal times. So these are the dangers that you really need to let your students know about. You need to really read up on it yourself as well, because there's a lot of people thinking that cigarettes is not a big deal or vaping is not a big deal. Children are going around saying, well, I don't smoke cigarettes, I just vape, and they think that vaping is a safe alternative to cigarettes. It's not. It's actually frying your lungs. The oils, the stuff that they're vaping, are causing serious damage. There's been a lot of deaths from vaping from young people. You can go read for it yourself to see how dangerous it is. So don't sit there and think, when you look at this and say, oh, they're only talking about alcohol and nicotine. They're not talking about fentanyl, like Catan told us last class. He taught me something. I didn't have any idea, but I went online and I looked up what he was saying about even touching fentanyl, that drug called fentanyl, which is an opioid. I saw that police officers were actually being hospitalized because they were doing field tests on fentanyl. They would arrest somebody. And right now, did you know that fentanyl, the drug fentanyl, the smuggling cases for that have gone up 4,000% just in the last 2 years. They're catching a bunch of it coming across the southern border down there, a bunch of it. It's a huge problem. But sometimes when it gets through, these police officers that are pulling people over and they're catching them with it, they have to do field tests to see if it's, really what kind of drug it is or whatever. Some of them are touching it and they're getting hospitalized just from touching it. Just from touching it. One guy basically went into a coma for like over a week, one police officer. Okay, that's the damage it's doing to people. Okay, these drugs are very, very harmful. I'm glad he told us about that. I had no idea about that. But, we need to educate ourselves as teachers so we can educate the students on the dangers of what they think are not very harmful things. Yeah, you're going to hear about marijuana too. You're going to hear, your students are going to always, a lot of them will always say, well, why is it so bad if it's legal? If it's legal, what's wrong with it? If it's legal, why can't I smoke marijuana? It's legal in Washington. It's legal in Portland, Oregon, or it's legal in Washington, D.C., or, Well, my answer is real simple. We're going to see what my answer is here. We're going to go to page 11, and we're going to read Knowledge is Power. And I'll tell you what my answer is. It says, taking your education seriously is another way you can demonstrate that you are a unique individual with moral potential. You have a responsibility, we, as teachers and students, to continuously pursue positive moral ways to improve ourselves. One of the ways we can improve ourselves morally is by getting that education. Remember, educated in the Peaceful Solution on page 14 of the character unit means to get all the facts about anything that you hear or you want to get involved in that you think is safe or somebody's telling you is safe. Get all the facts, make sure those facts are correct before you make a decision. You have an obligation and responsibility to do that. Getting a sound education is one way in which you can do this. In addition to your basic subjects like English, social studies, mathematics, and science, a sound moral education will assist you in being aware of what is going on in your community, nation, and world. Like, hearing about what Catan said the other night about fentanyl, that spurred me to go on, and look for myself in the news to find out what was going on with this stuff. Okay, we need to inform ourselves. We have an obligation to do this because the more you know as a teacher, the more you're going to the more knowledge you can impart to your students. Because they're going to ask you. They're going to ask you these questions. If you're a teacher, they're going to ask you, well, what's wrong with nicotine? What's wrong with cigarettes? What's the big deal? What's the big deal with having a drink? You got to know what to tell them. You got to be informed. Well-informed people are knowledgeable about the world around them. They pay attention to the influences around them. They gather all the facts. Then, get this, here's what they do. Then they test and prove what is correct before making the decision. Oh, test and prove? Okay, so if somebody comes to me with a cigarette, I have to test it, right? I have to go ahead and take that cigarette and test it to see if the teacher's right. If it really will mess my brain up, I should test it. I should do an experiment with it and try it. Is that what it's saying? No. Let me tell you how you test and prove something. You test and prove it using the peaceful solution as your standard. Okay? I'll explain that. To test something, to prove something means to compare against a standard. In other words, compare what you're being told and the information you're receiving with what you're learning in the Peaceful Solution Character Education program. If something is right, if something is beneficial, here's something really simple about, just cigarettes. What is beneficial about cigarettes? Is there any benefit to smoking cigarettes? Just think, just think for a minute. Is there any benefit? Realistically, is there anything that you're going to gain or profit from smoking cigarettes? I can't think of anything, and I used to smoke. Now, when I was smoking, I thought, well, I'm gaining something because it's calming me down. I don't feel that urge for a cigarette, so I feel better now. I feel good now. That was my benefit. But you know what? After I stopped smoking, boy, that's when you really notice there's no benefit. And you also notice the benefits of not smoking. You notice how smelly they are, how nasty and stinky and smelly they are, and how they get on your clothes and your breath. You get up close to somebody that smokes and it's very offensive. Okay? You don't notice it when you're a smoker because you stink yourself. So you don't notice it because you smell that way. I noticed that my heart wasn't palpitating all the time anymore when I stopped smoking cigarettes. It wasn't racing. I didn't get cold hands and cold feet anymore because my circulation came back. Boy, I noticed all kinds of things after I quit smoking. I started noticing how much better I felt. But if you can't name me one benefit to doing this, if you can't name a benefit, then guess what? It's not right. If it doesn't remember, if something's right, it doesn't bring harm to you, everyone around you, and the environment. Did you know, I learned this a long time ago from the author of The Peaceful Solution. When you smoke a cigarette and you blow the smoke out of your mouth, did you know that what's in your lungs, if you have tuberculosis or you have some kind of a virus or something in your lungs, that it goes out of your lungs in that cloud of smoke and it floats? Just like if you sneeze, when you sneeze, you don't see it, but it goes like 20, 30 feet across the room. The particles. When you smoke and you blow that smoke out of your lungs, whatever's in your lungs, whatever harmful bacteria or whatever you got in your body, it goes out into the air and it floats around and it hits other people. It enters their space. Your cloud is entering their space. That's actually like going into somebody's house without asking, isn't it? Inadvertently, aren't you kind of like trespassing there? Do you think I want your smoke up my nose? Well, of course, we don't think of those things. That's what we have to educate people about, you know, because a lot of things are being transferred that way. A lot of diseases, people catch things that way just from smoke, you know, coughing, sneezing, and blowing smoke. So if there's no benefit to it, is it something that we should do? If we can't think of any benefit, is it something we should partake of as a peaceful solution student or teacher? I can't hear you. No way. No way. If there's no benefit, we don't want it. So test and prove using the peaceful solution. Compare it against the peaceful solution and see, is this something that I should be doing? Remember, experience is not the best way to learn. Remember what Catan said last class? He said, we don't want children to suffer the consequences to learn the lesson. You don't try the cigarette to see if the teacher was right. You don't try the alcohol to see if your mom and dad was right. That's not what you do. You compare what you're learning with the peaceful solution to see if it's something you should be doing. We want to teach them to differentiate between right and wrong by teaching moral character education, as found right here. This is how you teach right from wrong, and this is what the children need to compare it to. If they're being asked, or if they're being tempted or tested to try something by their friends or their peers, they need to, if we educate them and we give them all these facts like we're learning right now, do you realize they're going to be much better informed, they're going to be much more aware, and they're going to be able to make a perfect decision? You can't make a perfect decision. You remember what this book taught you? It taught us? In the very back, the very last page. I'm going to read this to you in the character unit, the very last page. Don't forget this. Remember this, it says. It says, basing your decisions on facts, not emotions, not how you feel about something, not how you feel at the moment, basing your decisions on the facts. I just gave you some facts about nicotine. I gave you some facts about vaping. I gave you some facts about alcohol. You can go read them yourself. And I didn't even give you all the facts. I have to hold back. I'm in a family-oriented class. Basing your decisions on facts, not how you feel, is what builds true moral character. You are better able to make a perfect decision when you gather all the facts than a person who only has a portion of the facts. If you don't have all the facts, everyone, you can't make a perfect decision. We can't make a perfect decision. So we've got to educate ourselves. We have an obligation to get all the information we can because knowledge is power. We've got to impart this knowledge. We have to be knowledgeable about what we're teaching in the peaceful solution. So we can impart that knowledge to the students so they too can impart it to their friends. Because remember, it's like a snowball effect. Remember the ripple effect? The ripple effect can be positive too. Wow, I didn't know that. Really? You know, and they can teach their friends. You know, they can be a real friend to the people that they're hanging out with. That's all the time I have right now, but let's see. The next class is going to be on 7/4/21. Sunday, 7/4/21 at 5:30 Central Standard Time. I hope everyone will tune back in with us. And remember, you know, keep studying the peaceful solution. Never think that you, when do we stop growing? When do we stop learning? You're never going to stop learning, okay? So with that, I thank you all for coming. And the next teacher will pick up on page 10 in the middle of the page. Is it page 10? Was that page 10? No, page 11. Knowledge is power in the middle of the page, okay? Thank you very much. Have a great evening.